Helldivers 2 is full of tough enemies. From Bile Titans to tanks, you're going to have a hard time dealing with some of them. But one enemy has reigned supreme atop all of the lists of difficulty, and that's the Charger. Let's jump in and see how we can deal with these best with these weapons and new stratagems. Let's go over the weapons first, as well as the patch updates that have made these weapons viable. The first weapon that I would recommend taking in against Chargers is the Flamethrower. Now, if you're not aware, the Flamethrower just received a 50% increase to its total damage. That is massive. It's the biggest buff we've seen on any weapon in the game so far. Now, I've taken down Chargers multiple times with the Flamethrower, and it's pretty easy. Generally speaking, 5-10 seconds total, and they're crisped. The only threat is that you are going to be doing damage to your friends as well. So if you're going in multiplayer, just be aware that your friends are probably going to die a little bit along the way if you're not careful with this weapon. Overall, I'd give the Flamethrower an A for dealing with Chargers. It's a great weapon, it's pretty quick and easy, and there's just a little bit of threat and incidentals along the way, so go ahead and give it a shot. If you've not tried it before, I highly recommend it. It's great. Probably the second best weapon for dealing with Chargers in the game right now is the Autocannon. Now, the Autocannon is a sweet kit if you've never used it before, and you get it pretty early, so give it a shot. In the most recent patch that the devs released, we're seeing that there's some pretty big differences to the Charger's armor layout that is really helpful for the Autocannon. Namely, the devs have stated that they are lowering the health of the Charger's head. It should now be a point where a well-placed shot from a recoilless rifle, or EAT-17, instantly kills a Charger. Now, I have to say, I've experimented with the Autocannon, and this also seems to have applied to this weapon as well. You can also target some of the Charger's weak points with this as well, like its back legs and its little butt, to do some extra damage to it. All things considered, I'd give the Autocannon an A- for dealing with Chargers. It's pretty great, it has less of a threat of the Flamethrower, but it also deals a little bit less damage, and once you get rid of that ammo, it's pretty much gone. You have to either have a backpack or something else to resupply, so I wouldn't say it's quite as viable as the Flamethrower, all in all. The third most effective weapon for dealing with Chargers, and just in general I would say, is the Arcthrower. The Arcthrower is great, it does a lot of damage overall, and it can even deal with some of the smaller waves of enemies as they come flying through. I've killed multiple Chargers with the Arcthrower, and it generally takes about 7 to 15 seconds of constant firepower to really get it down. This isn't quite as good as the Flamethrower or the Autocannon in my opinion, but I would still give it a pretty solid B to B+. Not only is it viable for use in the Chargers, but it's also really good against large groups of enemies. It has a chance of dealing some damage to your friends, but as long as you're not pointing it directly at them, it seems like the bounce rate has drastically been reduced recently. If you've never given this weapon a try, give it a shot because it's really good and it's also pretty fun to use. The final weapon I'd recommend using against Chargers is the Spear. I don't think the Spear is quite as viable as the others because it's a little bit more situational. Although when dealing with Chargers, you have 3 Spear rounds to really use, it's harder to reload and much slower, and the fact of the matter is you're going to have to pump 2 rounds of this into a Charger to really knock it down. That might not sound like much, but on a heated battlefield, it's essentially impossible to get these off without really jumping out of the fray and having someone distract. Overall, I'd give the Spear a B as well. I think it's a viable weapon, but I don't think it's quite as good as the others on this list. Now, in a recent interview, the dev said that instead of using weapons to deal with some of these bigger enemies, you should really lean on stratagems. And that is so true when it comes to the Charger. The best stratagem that you're going to have for dealing with Chargers is the Orbital Rail. This thing is sweet, takes Chargers down in one shot, the only downside being you have to be level 20 to get it. It's really not that hard to get to level 20, so try power leveling to get to that point because you can take a Charger down in one shot, and it's literally the best thing for using against Chargers and Bile Titans and basically everything else in the game. If you need one target taken down, the Orbital Rail is the best, period. A+, it gets A+s around, it is fantastic. If you're not using it, use it. It's the best. Probably the second best stratagem to use against Chargers is the 500 kg blast. Now this thing is pretty sweet and it is really fun to watch, to be entirely honest, but it's a little bit less reliable. You're gonna have to lead the target, especially if one's coming at you, and you can kill your entire team with this thing, so be careful. The best way to use this is to see a Charger in the distance and to throw it on top of him before it notices you. Now, if you throw a stratagem on an enemy, they won't notice right away, so you'll have enough time to drop it on them and run away without any issues. Overall, I'd give the 500 kg an A- just because it's a little bit more situational than the rail, and it's also got a little bit of a higher threat to your friends. Finally, the last stratagem that I'd recommend using is the Exosuit. The Exosuit is pretty sweet, although it's filled with a couple of bugs that are kind of game-breaking in my opinion. Essentially, the Exosuit can quickly take down chargers with a couple of rockets, 3 to 4 in my experience, but there's a big risk of killing yourself in this thing. You can't turn too quick because you'll blow yourself up. You can't shoot too close because you'll blow yourself up. You can't shoot near your friends because you'll blow them up. Basically, this thing is a walking death trap. It's awesome to use, but it's got a lot of risks that come with it, so use it at your own risk. I would say overall that this is still like a B+ for dealing with chargers, but overall it is a little bit more difficult to utilize than the other two stratagems. Finally, as a little bonus tip here, chargers are really predictable, and if you learn how they move, you can easily dodge them. Wait for them to come close to you and just move in little circles. A little circle is enough to confuse most of these chargers, and you can quickly dodge out of the way of most of their attacks. Simply wait for them to go by and just blast them in the butt, because that is their weak spot, and if you can hit it, you're going to deal more damage. Some people say that it's a little bit too tanky to really focus on. In my opinion, it's actually pretty viable. So make sure you're moving in circles and just dodge out of the way. Overall, chargers are pretty difficult to deal with, but when you know how to deal with them, they're a piece of cake. For your weapons, make sure that you're taking in your Autocannon and your Flamethrower, because those things are going to mow through them. And for your stratagems, don't shy away from the Orbital Rail and the 500 kg. These things are sweet, and if you're in a bind, go ahead and drop your mech suit because it's kind of fun to do too. These tips should make chargers a breeze to deal with, so don't shy away from trying new weapons because shifting your meta is extremely important in this game. I am going to be pumping out new Helldivers 2 information, so if you want more, hit a like and a subscribe to stay informed. Either way, I'm having a blast with this game and I hope you are too, so I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace!
You